The 70th anniversary of Godzilla was a couple of weeks ago now, and what a 70 years it's been. From comic books, merchandise, movies, and even comic books, it seems as if the King of Monsters has truly left his stomp on pop culture. And with as many iterations as he has, it's only natural that one would ask who is the strongest. It's Godzilla. By the way, it's Godzilla. Despite that objective fact though, people seem to always think one thing or another. And when this line of discussion pops its head up, there's no other Godzillas who get their name tossed in the ring as much as Godzilla in Hell and Marvel Godzilla. And honestly, it's easy to see why. Godzilla in Hell was able to venture through hell and defeat the forces of all creation. GHW is so stupidly OP that the comic book premise sounds like a Chuck Norris joke, you know? They say that Godzilla went to hell once, and after 5 mid-issues, hell died. Yeah, that story is mid, by the way. I don't care. Marvel Godzilla doesn't have that weakness though, as his comic book run is actually one of my personal favorites. It's probably my favorite Godzilla comic of all time, period. But my bias aside, I will try to be objective when answering this question. And hey, I'm not saying that Marvel Godzilla is weak or anything. That guy fought through the entire canon Marvel universe. You know how people were freaking out about Godzilla fighting Superman in the Justice League? Those guys weren't canon. They have no scaling. But these guys, yeah, Godzilla was swapping hands with canon comics, classic Thor, Avengers, all those guys. So as you can see, we have a banger today. And before we get into it, I'd like to implore you guys to subscribe. We're on the road to 50K and we're pretty close. We're about a month away from the new year and I would like to hit it before then. We post 4 to 5 shorts a week at this point and we cover a variety of topics from the Q, Rocky, FNAF, everything's on the table here at the Goji-Chronic channel. So on top of the consistent content, odds are statistically you're gonna find something that you like. And hey, it's free and nothing beats free. But with that e-begging out the way, seriously though, subscribe. Let's get into the topic that you clicked the video for. Marvel Godzilla's best feats generally come from inverse, as at the time period, he scaled to some of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe. I want to really stress that point, especially because Marvel has gotten notable power jumps for most of its heavy hitters, so it's safe to say that the pieces of media that were released around the time are really the best things to use when scaling Marvel Godzilla. On that same note, lore that was released after the fact, I won't really be using, as stuff like the cosmology has changed and been expanded upon drastically, especially in terms of scope and scale. So for example, there's a statement from one of the recent remasters of this collection that states that Godzilla scales to the House of Ideas, but I really won't be using that for this section at least, as that's an aspect of the cosmology that was expanded decades after the fact. So I feel like giving Godzilla that buff is kind of ratty. So I'm just gonna stay in the time range for when his story was released, as I feel like that's the most consistent way to scale him. So yeah, Godzilla doesn't scale to current Marvel characters like Hero, Thor, or Turbo Hulk. So yeah, with that being said, Godzilla is blatantly superior to most of the Marvel characters he comes into contact with. Everyone from the Fantastic Four, the Champions, and even the Avengers are really no match for him, with multiple encounters unironically ending with him just getting bored and walking away. Before we dive into the feats of the superheroes that he just blatantly upscales, I think we should start to quantify how much stronger he is than the Marvel heroes, especially as surprisingly it's pretty easy, as in the comic run Godzilla fights a set of alien kaiju who were designed to be comparable to the planet's strongest beings. People like the Hulk, Doctor Strange, and even gods like Thor and Hercules should have been reliable gauges for the creations, you know, in terms of power. And Godzilla was able to overwhelm these guys to the point where they needed a 10 times multiplier to press him, while jumping him at the same time. On top of this level of power, Godzilla has a Hulk-like rage factor that boosts his power dramatically, as shown when he casually defeats a beast who is proving to press him. So at worst, Godzilla would be around 10 times stronger than the, top tier Marvel characters that he fights, and you can argue him to be higher due to his previously mentioned rage factor. To kind of start to give him some blatant AP stuff now, at worst, from an inverse perspective, he would be like Herald level, as in Galactus Herald tier, as he can endure hits from Thor's hammer, a construct that can hurt, Silver Surfer, and Galactus as well, the guy who literally eats planets. But for higher end stuff, the same Galactus who was able to fight with an amped Mephisto due to him being in his domain, with the surrounding stars and solar systems not surviving the conflict, with even galaxies trembling at their passive aura during this battle, and Godzilla shrugs off weapons that can hurt that guy. He also one-shotted classic comics Hulk, who during this time period was able to punch at forces pulling enough to destroy universes verbatim, the Hulk himself being a creature whose powers stayed to be infinite with no limit, by characters such as the Beyonder himself. Hulk was also able to punch out of constructs that can hold back Dormammu, a being who views the infinite multiverse of Marvel at the time, dirty and below him pretty much. And Godzilla was able to stomp out a creature who scales to that. For some consistency now, Godzilla, while in a weakened state, was able to shrug off and just, overpower Susan Storm's force fields, which are stated to be made out of energy from the 5th dimension. As for speed now, Marvel Godzilla kinda lowballed as a baseline will be capable of reacting and combating at speeds massively faster than the speed of light. This is mostly because he can fight with characters such as Thor, the Hulk, and blatantly overpowered kaiju that were meant to defeat the strongest heroes on Earth at the time, with us being able to assert that these guys can fight capable with these characters as well. Thor alone is a character who pretty famously can, fight on par with Silver Surfer, a guy who's consistently able to cross galaxies in seconds, as well as search the entire universe in a very short manner of time. This last point in particular is pretty notable, as the Marvel Universe is stated to be infinite and endlessly expanding. Some consistency for this premise is that Thor is able to literally throw Loki to Asgard while being on planet Earth. In recent Marvel comics, Asgard has been revealed to be a separate space-time from the Earth and where it resides in. I know I said I wouldn't use anything released decades after the fact, but seeing as how even back then these spaces were called different realms, and even in the original MILF that these concepts were pulled from, they were shown to be separate space-time, so I think it's fair enough. Thor utilizing his hammer can also time travel. We get a pretty nice confirmation that the 4th dimension is time in the Marvel Universe. So if you think this part right here kind of is like hacks and abilities for Thor rather than straight speed, Godzilla, by scaling to Susan Storm's constructs, which are stated to be 5th dimensional, would be automatically, immeasurable speed, as Godzilla can tear apart constructs that come from a dimension higher than the 4th, being time. Before we dive into the might of Godzilla and Hell, I'd like to take it back to something a lot more important, as I'd like to humble myself in front of you guys and just say thank you, as the channel has been doing really well, and it's because of each and every single one of you. Whether you just watch the videos, share it around, you guys all really helped this year. But seeing as how the year is wrapping up and we're coming closer into the holiday season, I would like to use the platform that you guys have given me to shed light on something a lot more important. As my buddy Godzilla Guy, or formerly known as Godzilla Guy, has started an initiative called Gifts from Goji, where we plan on raising tens of thousands of dollars to help kids with cancer. Goji Guy let me know what was going on a couple of months back, and I was really excited to be a part of it. Because I know what it's like to be powerless and just confused and just not being able to do anything, and sometimes you need that help. So the prospect of me potentially giving these kids a helping hand was it's awesome. Obviously this effort is going to be funded by donations, so if you guys have any change at all, then whether it's $100, $1, 1 cent, anything helps. Hopefully you should see a fundraiser tab around my video's title, and you can click that and directly donate from there. But if for whatever reason I didn't get it to work properly, I recommend you guys check out any of Godzilla Guys' video. It should be right there. You can donate from there. This movement should be lasting for, I'm assuming, all of the holiday season, so you don't have to do it right now. Whenever you can, you have a long time to. But if you're so inclined, hey, it's a season of giving, and I can't think of a lot of better things to give to. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to be calling Godzilla in Hell GIH, as I don't want to say Godzilla in Hell, it's kind of a mouthful. So yeah, GIH is one of the most powerful versions of the character, and you've more than probably heard about him, as he's the Goku of Godzillas, especially in the terms of who's beating him, so let's dive into why this is the case. At worst, GIH would scale anywhere from Dwarf Star level to multi-solar system level, as in a beam clash with Space Godzilla, he was able to destroy the planet Earth so violently that it caused an explosion that reached the moon, which is 285,000 miles away from Earth, or 384,400 kilometers away. To put this ludicrous distance into perspective, that distance would be the equivalent to almost 40,000 Mount Everest, stacked on top of each other. So as you could imagine, the yield of this blast has been calculated to be equivalent to 2.2 quintillions of TNT. You could even get this value even higher though, as according to the author, the battle is actually taking place in a pocket dimension created by the devil himself. And what we're actually seeing here is Godzilla and Space Godzilla being so strong they're destroying this pocket dimension. Keep in mind this construct at worst is shown to have a vast cosmos, so Godzilla would have been exerting casual multi-solar system AP just to escape this realm. Just had to point that out there because a lot of people think that Godzilla died to a planetary explosion when that did not happen. You know, if you want to really become specific about it now, IDW has kind of stated that they're not even allowed to kill Godzilla. So yeah, this isn't an anti-feat, it's actually a casual multi-solar system to even universal feat if you think this, you know, pocket-sized dimension was universal. But overall, like Marvel Godzilla, he would kind of just find himself in the stellar to cosmic to even universal ranges in terms of attack potency, and it would be a relative low end as well. As funny as that sounds, universal lowballed, let me stop wasting you guys' time and get into the stuff that you clicked for. For a myth and interpretation for GIH's scaling, he would scale anywhere from low multiversal to just straight up multiversal, as Godzilla in the story scales the God Mountain as he absorbed his power and then was able to kill him with it, as shown to us during the events of the third issue. Be sure to remember God Mountain as he carries a lot of his scaling, so yeah. But anyways, at worst, this would be a uni plus to low multiversal feat, as God Mountain was written to be an Abrahamic god type figure, which would mean that he created the cosmology. This would obviously include hell, which is more than likely a macrocosm. Think Dragon Ball type of space, if that helps you envision what I'm talking about. But anyways, yeah, this hell is composed of multiple realms, up to 8 if I remember correctly, with some of these realms being stated to be infinite in size or capable of holding infinite things. So this is a pretty casual way to get him to low multiversal, but you could argue him to just straight up be multiversal, as one scan in particular states that God Mountain rules over the multiverse that, due to his status as an Abrahamic god, he probably more than likely created. This kind of same thinking is how you get into Godzilla and Hell's higher ends, as according to the author of issue 3, God Mountain created everything in the Godzilla multiverse, you know, everything from Rulers of Earth, Godzilla Ongoing, Rage Across Time. Yeah, God Mountain made those separate timelines. I give this statement or interpretation some credence, as the guy who stated it wrote multiple IDW and multiple IDW Godzilla comics, so fair enough, nothing that contradicts it, I guess. Plus, IDW themselves has confirmed that all of their comics share the same grander megaverse cosmology, so everything being connected is canon, you know, at the very worst, right? And God Mountain potentially created everything from Transformers IDW, you know, Mars Attacks IDW, Power Rangers IDW, even freaking My Little Pony IDW. I think that interpretation's a little iffy in my opinion. Like, it's technically not wrong, but I think that scaling God Mountain to everything in the IDW Godzilla part of the multiverse is, you know, closer to something that's consistent. There are multiple Godzilla IDW stories that reaffirm that the universes are infinite in size and they compose infinite timelines or alternate realities, so that would mean that God Mountain, by viewing this construct as finite, would be a fifth dimensional construct, as he views infinite 4D constructs as finite and small than himself, and he himself is smaller than the space that he's in that he presumably created. So yeah, Godzilla in Hell, by scaling to God Mountain, would have some pretty casual 5D scaling. But you can get even crazier with it, because the IDW Godzilla run has canonically crossed over with the Boom Power Ranger stuff, and during that comic book run it was explicitly revealed that these two IPs share the same cosmology. And if you remember this video right here, you'd know that the Power Rangers universe has fifth dimensional constructs in it, so God Mountain viewing that as finite would actually make him 6D. For some more consistency in this range of AP, the IDW Godzilla run is also likely in the same grander cosmology as the Toho films, as you have multiversal variants of characters such as Mickey Sagusa making, you know, appearances. So that would also mean that, you know, this grander multiverse would be composed of things like fourth dimensional spaces and realms that subsequently get upscaled by things like super gravity. So yeah, that's a more 6D-ish consistency for God Mountain, which Godzilla scales to in this run. And that would still be a relatively like mid-end interpretation for Godzilla in Hell, as the things that he fights in the next issues are called stronger and even greater, with Destroyer and Ghidorah being called his greatest foes, and the big mountain thing that he fights at the finale of the comic run is stated to be the greatest or strongest thing that he's ever faced. And Godzilla became so powerful after defeating him that pretty much nothing could beat him after the fact. As for GIH's speed scaling now, he would easily have infinite speed, as each issue kind of ends with him just walking into a new pocket of hell. Presumably he just walked there via speed. Like, some of these realms are stated to be endless, like verbatim, and the next time we see him, he's out of there. And as for like higher ends, he would have immeasurable speed due to his scaling the God Mountain, a guy who literally created, you know, the entire cosmology and transcends infinite fourth dimensional constructs at a low end. So yeah, speed scaling is pretty simple for Godzilla in Hell. So in conclusion, who would win? Well, between the both of them, Godzilla in Hell in terms of consistency scales higher as his cosmology was just more fleshed out at the time of its release. His like higher end cosmology scaling is also backed up by narrative and author intent, as whereas Marvel Godzilla fights characters who scale to higher beings or deities, Godzilla in Hell really just blows them up or destroys them, with multiple authors, despite them not even really collaborating or coming together to make this miniseries, all agreeing that yeah, he defeated a deity, said deity being the guy who created everything. But if you want to do high end versus high end, then fine, whatever. Marvel Godzilla would just kind of scale at wherever you scale the Marvel cosmology, but then we'd have to turn around and do the same thing for Godzilla in Hell, and at best, he would scale above IDW's Megaverse, which includes all of their IPs, with some of said IPs having canon crossovers with some DC properties, interlinking their cosmologies, which DC in themselves has had canon crossover scaling to Marvel. So Godzilla in Hell would end up transcending the cosmology that Marvel Godzilla would scale to if we use high end versus high end. Are you guys starting to see why I try to keep it consistent versus consistent end? You know, a whole bunch of semantics I come up with using the super duper high end stuff. I'm really trying to keep it to, you know, time period, what was consistent at the time, and what's an accurate representation of each of these characters. Marvel Godzilla is still very, very powerful, but you know, Godzilla in Hell is cracked for a reason. I was a naysayer for a very long time, but you know, after looking at how everything works, it's like, yeah, he might be him. Literally blows up the guy who created the infinite Godzilla multiverse, which includes like the movies, potentially other comic books. It's just like, yeah, he's cracked, man. As in conclusion, the winner of this matchup would be Godzilla in Hell. And believe it or not, his ends get even higher. I didn't really get into them because I don't think they're as consistent as the stuff that I presented. But if you would be interested to see like the extent of his power, then I would recommend you guys check out King of Godzilla's YouTube channel. It should be on screen, it should be in the description. But yeah, this guy really helped me alongside Godzilla King of the Monsters. That guy's always helping me with Godzilla stuff. What can I say? Be sure to give his channel some love. He just dropped the Mothra video. It was a banger. I was there when it dropped. Looks like some of y'all need to go bless that video up as well. But yeah, that's the video. What'd you guys think? Did I downplay Marvel Godzilla, or was this outcome about what you expected? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And if you would like to see more matchups using more powerful out there versions of the characters, then be sure to let me know as well. You know, you do that by commenting. So, you know, if you would like to see that, let me know. But as always, I'll see you guys next week. But until then, stay big, G fans.